And welcome back. And we're in the module now of selection and sourcing, or sorry, selection. And I'm delighted to be joined by Stephen Tweed again. And thank you so much, Stephen. We've had a wonderful series of conversations. And where we've ended up, where we land today, is looking at the selection process and what can you do to identify those people who are really high potential. And of course, the interview sometimes on its own is quite a poor proxy, in a very short space of time, quite a poor proxy for picking good people. So what's your approach to selecting the best caregivers?
Well, it really has an interesting history, Neil. Back in 2006, here in the US, the caregiver shortage was beginning to emerge. And we were being retained by clients to help them figure out how to find better quality caregivers. And we went out and did some research, and I mentioned the survey and the report that we did that in 2015 that we're going to make available to your viewers. But we did the first study in 2006, and we found out about all the most effective recruiting techniques. But what came out of that research was the concept that selection is the key. That while attraction is important, selection is really the key. That if you do a really good job of selection, you will end up with better quality caregivers who will stay with you over a long period of time. And it was then that we went out and looked at the whole selection process, and we went out and searched the psychometric testing industry for a tool that we could use, and we created a product that we call Caregiver Quality Assurance. And it's that same tool that you use that we've come to know as People Clues, and now the brand name is changing to the Big Five approach. But it's the tool, which is how you and I met how many ever years ago, through this assessment tool. So we built our Caregiver Quality Assurance program, and we introduced it to the home care industry in the US, and we've had hundreds and hundreds of companies use this tool over the last decade. And in 2015, when we redid the caregiver recruiting study, it reinforced this notion of selection. And in our last module, we talked about systems. And so we put together a 7-step system for selection, starting with the application. And you and I have had numerous conversations about a short, concise application. Then doing your pre-screening, whether it be by telephone or online. Then doing the pre-employment assessment. And we both place great value in the information that comes from that pre-employment psychometric assessment. And then a behavioral interview. And now we have evolved that into what we call a culture fit interview. In our first conversation in the fundamentals module, we talked about culture, and what we're seeing our mastermind members do is building a specific interview around the core values that make up their culture. And so we're doing a culture fit interview. We always say hire for attitude, train for skills. And part of that attitude or patterns of thinking is, what are the core values that drive that worker? What's their work ethic? And then once we do the interview and are comfortable that this person is a good fit for our agency, then we do the criminal background checks and the drug screens and the work references and the personal references. But it's all part of a system. And the more effective you are at each step in that system, the better you're able to select high quality caregivers.
No, that's fantastic. And it's very interesting, what you talk about, the culture fit interview, because we have in the UK moved towards what's called values-based interviewing and recruitment. And in fact, it's very similar. And that's it's very, very interesting that it's a global move. So, okay, that's really interesting. And of course, one of the challenges, if you're looking to hire people for their attitude, then and because we can train them with everything else, is that if people are applying, of course, on a job board, it's difficult with a CV in some cases to see behind the person. So having these steps that you advocate, where you can speak to them and start learning and look for signs of either through psychometrics and speaking to them, looking for examples of the sorts of behaviors that would indicate, well, for a start, not someone who's going to cause you problems with counterproductive behavior, but also more than that, finding those people that are high potential and prioritizing those.
Exactly. So as you said, simply looking at a CD or an online application isn't telling us much about the person. And so it's only when we have some conversation, whether it's via telephone or in-person interview, that we're really able to dig into who is this person, and does their value system and their work ethic and their personality fit with our company and what we're trying to do in caring for our clients.
So at the point you meet them for an interview, actually you can learn quite a lot ahead of that time, can't you? So you're not going in cold with somebody, you're actually very well prepared. Yeah, and you've already identified quite a lot to talk about. So yes, that's really,
exactly.
Yeah, no, fantastic.
And the pre-employment assessment really helps us then to structure the interview questions. And so, and we talked in the last module about systems. And so having an interviewing process where you basically have some core questions that you always ask, and then some flexible questions that you ask based on the results of the pre-employment assessment. Now you're crafting an interview that's unique to that individual, but that is consistent with all the interviews that you've asked every applicant. So now you're able, and again, we talked about what gets measured gets managed. So it's tracking the results of those interviews and then looking at 90-day retention rates and 1-year retention rates to say, what did we learn in the selection process that helped us identify people who would still be with us a year from now?
Oh, fantastic. It's really helpful. Thank you so much for that insight, Stephen. And it's been a pleasure. It's a shame we've kind of come to the end of these modules and our chat. So I'm sure we'll continue to have many more in the future. But I'd like to thank you on behalf of everybody for taking the time to tell us some of your findings and some of your expertise. And if people are interested, we'll put the link. The book I can thoroughly recommend. Conquering the Crisis is an excellent read, and we'll put details of how to reach you on the screen as well. So thank you again, Stephen. It's been a real pleasure.
Please do that, and again, an open invitation to any of your viewers. If they have questions or would like to have conversation about any of the things that we've talked about, they can send me an email, and I will respond to them personally. You can put that information up on the screen as well.
We will do. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.